Welcome to Geeks Corner. I'm Mr. DAPs.
I'm Caitie.
And tonight we are joined by my good friend, Mr. the Visioneer himself.
Hello there. Hello.
Yay, Doug.
Always
Yes.
good to have you here. If you, what should people do, Caitie?
You should go to geekscorner.live if that is not already where you are watching. Or if you're watching on YouTube, just participate in the chat. We can see a nice little fun chat box.
Yes, we can see what you're saying and we will try to respond.
Yeah.
But tonight, the main focus, and it actually turned out to be, I think, completely appropriate to have it this week as opposed to last week, is WandaVision, because we got to see assembled the making of WandaVision over the weekend. I think all three of us watched that. And
yes.
yeah, I texted, I think about it. But for the last, what has this been? 10 weeks now.
Yeah.
WandaVision has been 9 weeks because they had the first two episodes at the same time now that I think about it. But WandaVision has been a central part of what we've been discussing off of the air and not quite as much on the air, mainly because we didn't have Doug here all the time. But Doug has been I'm going to call him our WandaVision expert.
Definitely.
Not just on the screen,
You can
but
call me the Wanda Visionary. There you
Visionary. Go. That is so much better. I love that.
Yes. There you go.
Yes. So our WandaVisionary Doug started things off from week one saying, hey, I got this cool idea for an article about where things have been filmed. We'll get into some of that. Before we get into that really quick, I want from everybody, we've now seen all of this show. Mm-hmm. We've got much more context about Wanda and Vision, all of this stuff. How do you feel and what did you think about this show now that it's over? And of course, ladies first.
Thank you. I thought it was a beautiful show. I really like how they tackled grief. I think they did it in a very good way that Marvel has never tackled such complex emotions. Normally it's just the heroes win and they're happy, or the heroes lose and they're sad. Or in Endgame, they didn't know what to do, so they just made a joke out of Thor. I think they tackled a very complex issue very well. I thought the storytelling was beautiful. Overall, I was thrilled with the series, and I'm very excited to see what it was setting up for Multiverse of Madness.
Good answer. All right, Doug, what did you think?
I have to agree with you. One of the things that I was frankly concerned about is a lot of times Wanda in the comic books was treated as a woman who is, dare I say, crazy with grief. And that the idea that a powerful woman can't handle all that power, so she's emotionally unstable and she makes all kinds of terrible accidents and mistakes, and then it makes her feel all the more grief-filled and grief-stricken. And it was a trope that, in the 60s and 70s made sense to a lot of men who were writing comics. And I thought that they handled that whole aspect of Wanda, that yes, her grief did cause her to create this, the anomaly, the Maximoff anomaly, or the Hex, which is a much more elegant name, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But that they did not go there, and especially when they gave her that line, "I don't need you to tell me who I am."
Yeah.
That she knows who she is, and she can be a powerful woman who does not have to be constantly tripped up by, women are too emotional to be powerful. She was not tripped up by that.
Yes.
Oh, you're totally right. And I was actually thinking too that the process of her going through the grief actually made her, I think, one of the most relatable Marvel heroes that we've had to date. Because everybody's had some sort of grief in their life at one point or another. And I really found myself just being like, this is the most relatable character I've seen on the screen from Marvel. And I loved that that we kind of got to go through the process together with her. And it wasn't they didn't make it a comic book. I mean, you're absolutely right. They didn't trivialize it. It was like, hey, we're going to go through this and it's not going to be pretty and it's not going to be perfect. And it's not going to be, Superman coming to save the day. Yes, I know I just switched companies there.
Yeah.
But I did that intentionally.
Studio.
I know. Disney hasn't bought them yet. But hey, we started Geeks Corner because Disney didn't own Marvel and Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true now that you mention it. Well, no, and also interesting is it not?
Now it might happen.
Interesting is it not that typically you see the men up fighting each other and battling, and the women talking it over and coming to a consensus. And the climactic scenes in this were Vision and White Vision calmly talking it over in a library and coming to a consensus, while Wanda and Agnes Agatha are up in the clouds pummeling each other and having the big epic battle scene. So that was another really interesting switch.
And it was so engaging to watch.
I also think that Agatha is one of the MCU's most compelling villains.
But is she a villain?
That
we don't know yet.
Antagonist, not villain.
Yeah. Within the MCU, it is an interesting thing that Agatha appeared to be positioned as a pretty straightforward big bad villain, whereas in the comic books, she has a very long history with Wanda, and if anything, she's a teacher, mentor, occasional antagonist. But and I was wondering, okay, now they're not going to kill her off, are they? Because they have been known to do this,
right?
Quicksilver. And but the way that they did that at the end, where Agatha says, "You're going to need me," and Wanda just smiles and says, "Well, I'll know where to find you." And I thought, oh, perfect. That means they can easily bring her back in the role of her quote unquote teacher, mentor. And she can either be working with her or working against her. So they've left it a really marvelous open door there.
Well, and it's quite possible to be both.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's what makes that relationship so interesting is you can literally make it this, you kind of need each other, but that doesn't mean you're always on the same side. And that's I think one of the most intriguing parts of that character all through the show and moving on beyond. One of the other intriguing parts was something that you really got into is the different eras of WandaVision as we went through. And so one of the fun articles that you wrote was talking about how it pulled from different TV shows through the years. Before we talk too much about that, I'm very curious from each of you, what was your favorite era? Because I actually think we might have 3 completely different answers. I could be wrong. I don't know. What was your favorite era of WandaVision? If you don't want to go first, Caitie, you don't have to. But if you don't, then I'm going to make Doug.
Make Doug.
Okay, Doug, what was your favorite era?
In terms of the way they handled it in WandaVision, I was really totally blown away by the 1970s, episode 3.
Yeah.
Probably my least favorite era of sitcoms, and probably one of the world's weirdest sitcoms ever, The Brady Bunch. It's the only sitcom in which they basically never told jokes. They said all sorts of strange, disjointed things to each other, and then the laugh track laughed. And they captured that so beautifully in WandaVision, and the bizarre, superficial look of the show, that highly artificial, and the way they started out on the back lot, and then they slowly moved it onto a sound stage until you reached a point where everything was artificial. Because I don't know if you knew this, but the Brady Bunch, other than a couple of very special episodes, never shot on location. The house, the backyard, the front yard, everything was on sound stages. And I noted that in the article. And one of the funnier things in it was at the very beginning of the episode, right after the theme song, they played a little musical stinger and they showed the outside of the house. And it was the world's longest musical stinger, a little bouncy little tune establishing it. They used to do that on the Brady Bunch all the time. And according to people who worked on the show, it was because the scripts were always coming up short. And so they would have these long static shots of like the outside of the house or an object on the bed or something and play a little music over it. And I just thought it was funny that they did that. So in terms of capturing the absolute superficial weirdness of it, episode 3, the 70s.
Cool. Caitie.
I'm stuck between the 2000s and the 2010s.
Wow.
I 50s was also very up there, but I was like, which ones? I think I'm gonna go with 2000s because the Halloween episode was just so good. I liked the aesthetic of it. I felt what they did very, very well with all of the decades was they played, like you were saying, the musical stingers and the background music and the scene changes, all of that they captured very, very well. True to the sitcoms. I wasn't a big Malcolm in the Middle person, nor have I ever watched Modern Family. But I think I just really loved the Halloween episode. Like, I think that might be what's doing it for me. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. I definitely was in that 50s and 60s range. No surprise there. I think leaning a little bit towards the 50s, but I just really liked how they recreated the shows I would watch with my grandparents and parents as a kid. And I think Nickelodeon had a lot of those shows when I was growing up. And so it was just a very like easy to connect. And it's like, oh, well, I could fit in there too, because I dress that way. But I actually had a thought the other day. I was like, I have a picture of Doug and I in front of Small World like a year ago, I think, maybe a little bit more. I think it was before Magic Happens. And we were, or was it a Dapper Day?
It was a Dapper Day.
It was Dapper Day. That's what it was. But we were both dressed up and we would have totally fit into, we had the look, we had the right era. It was perfect. And I just loved the music too, which I think is something we should talk about real quick. Is I loved what they did with the different themes that were all interconnected through the entire show. And I don't know if we didn't actually write anything about this. They acknowledged it on the Assembled, and I was like, I loved that they did that. Did you have did the theme songs relate to where you liked the show the best? Did you catch the connections? Like, what did you guys think of the music? Go ahead.
Well, because of course I was looking at it in a very different way than a lot of people were. I immediately noted the motif, da 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 dum. That motif I noticed right away, and especially the open of episode 2, which everybody says, "Oh, it's Bewitched," because the animated opening is so much like Bewitched. The theme song itself, I felt, was far more like Hugo Montenegro and "I Dream of Jeannie."
Oh, I agree completely.
But, yeah, because that peppy, bouncy. I don't know if you've seen, but in some places it's called the Wanda Samba.
I like that.
As the Wanda Samba, and so and also the fact that they did instead of random stars, it was the hexagon around the moon. It was exactly 6 points. Ding, 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 ding. And so yes, I noticed that pretty much right away, and then I started listening for it every time the new theme song would come up,
which was brilliant. I thought it was great. Did you want to say anything about the music, Caitie?
50s is probably one of my favorites. 60s get stuck in my head to the point where I do it at work. But I do it at work. It's really bad.
Yeah.
But I also think they just did a really fantastic job of pulling from other sitcoms. The 2010s is almost an exact it's not a replica, but you immediately know that it's The Office.
Yeah, it was.
But it's WandaVision.
Although a lot of people point out it's Happy Endings, but it's a show. Happy Endings was a show I had never even heard of. And then when people there's a really amazing thing on YouTube. Someone actually put Happy Endings open and WandaVision, that episode, open side by side and played the music at the same time, and they complement each other perfectly.
Huh.
Oh, that's creepy.
So, yeah. It's very, very creepy.
Well,
very much.
The Anderson Lopez's are ridiculously talented.
Ridiculously talented. And I can't tell you how excited I was during that animated opening for episode 2, when, as I was looking at something, I suddenly realized they had Agnes literally standing in front of the house from Bewitched in the stylized animated opening. Because I was watching it again, because I had a tendency to look at it incessantly. And I suddenly said, oh, that's cute. They have Dottie and Phil standing in front of their house. And then there's Herb. And then Agnes is standing in front of the Bewitched house, holding Miss Senior Scratchy in her arms. Did you ever hear why Agatha carries a black cat always with her.
Mhm.
Ebony, her black cat. Did you ever hear the story of why it's Senior Scratchy?
No.
Because cats are notoriously hard to train and misbehave on the set, so they gave her a rabbit.
That is brilliant. I love that.
I don't know if it's true, but that was one of the things that went out, was that they didn't want to have to deal with a cat
That's fair.
because they had enough to deal with.
I think that's, well, and you think of how quickly they had to do all of this. When you think of Assembled, and they say they completely turn things over or turn things around overnight.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there had to be like 2 giant cargo containers just off set. And I've done a lot of productions where we had to change things over really fast. And what happens is, as soon as shooting is done for the night, they turn on flood lamps and the night crew comes sweeping in, and they tear down, they put up, you have all your props and more props than you need ready to reset dress. And what amazed me in watching the making of is how many things we did not get to see. For example, the drugstore that you see her walking into in the last ad for Nexus.
Yes.
That drugstore is in downtown Westview. If you look closely, you will see that drugstore in downtown Westview in one of the behind the scenes things, but I sure didn't see it in the program. So yeah. And there's quite a few things like that. So yeah, they did an amazing job.
Takes that look like that they showed in the Assembled that weren't exactly what we saw in the show. And that wasn't a huge surprise, but there was one of them with Agatha even where I was like, I kind of wish they used that one, because I don't remember what it is at the moment, but
don't you know that Catherine Hahn had to have done some amazing ad-libbing on the set? How much material that they couldn't use that I'm sure they were saying, oh, I wish we could use this.
Yeah,
right?
I do not doubt it, because Catherine Hahn is insanely talented.
One of the things, as you were talking about the set and different areas that they didn't use, is you did a fantastic job of going through the town and saying, this is where this is where that is. And then also later on, you went back and you showed the progress of the town, which, as they were showing the Assembled thing, you caught one, was it Wentworth's, where there was something that was still left up or something?
When you first see the Hex in episode 8, when Wanda is revisiting all the events, and it sweeps over the town, changing it from dreary present to sparkly 1950s black and white Westview for Wanda. Wentworth's department store does not have its huge aluminum steel facade on it. It does in every other shot, but not in the shot where it sweeps across. Also, this is how geekish I am. It just irritates me when I watch that beautiful sequence where Wanda and Vision are in the living room. They've tucked the kids in for the night, and you see the Hex sweeping over, and you know it's getting closer and closer. And then as it moves up Blondie Street, that is the actual name of the street. It's called Sherwood Lane, and I think that's a tribute to Sherwood Schwartz for some reason, the creator of Brady Bunch. When it moves up Sherwood Lane, it moves in reverse.
I noticed that too, actually.
You did, yes. It goes from Agnes's house past the middle house and sweeps backwards. And I thought,
how'd that happen?
How did that happen? But it shows it off better than if they had done it in the other direction.
You know, I went the Star Trek route with it, and they had a movie called Generations, and they had that thing called the Nexus. And you remember how it moved? And I was like, maybe when it's kind of moving in like that, it's like the Nexus, and it's just moving around. And so
it undulates.
Yes. So that was my rationalization for it.
It's not a perfect six-sided barrier closing in.
It was at one point, but not like once it's closing, it's no longer the same. I don't know. That was the way I rationalized it in my head, because I'm sure that's all I would have thought about otherwise. Because I tend to get stuck focused on those kinds of things once in a while, and that's never so good. So we got to see a progression of the family. I think we should talk about, especially with the shirt you're wearing.
My tribute to their moment in Town Square.
Such a good moment.
It's a great moment.
Oh, it was a great moment.
How do you think this fits into the bigger MCU?
It is hard to say. I can tell you one way it doesn't.
Okay.
if you want. One of the things I wanted to mention, the one fan base that is so cranky and so unhappy with what happened in this show are those X-Men fans.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. When Evan Peters showed up at the door and they all went into hyperdrive,
Yep.
grabbing every clue, every Easter egg, every tiny thing that proved that 20th Century Fox's X-Men was now being pulled into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, despite the fact that the show is called WandaVision, not X-Men and Quicksilver. Yeah. And of course, too, while they were looking at all these tiny little clues that they believed were littered through the show, they were not looking at the big, obvious things they were saying, i.e., Wanda does not recognize him and does not know who he is. Wanda spends all this time trying to figure him out. Wanda flings him across town square when he says something so horrific that her twin brother, with whom she has a psychic bond, would never say. And then, of course, during Agatha all the time, when we clearly see Agatha literally hexing him at the front door.
Yep.
Those things, well, we'll just set those aside because I noticed that when his sleeve was hanging down next to that bookcase, it formed an X like you saw at, it's like, no.
I will say the funniest thing I saw is that Evan Peters just has a mom tattoo on his arm. He just has one. So somebody said, oh, he has a tattoo, MOM, Multiverse of Madness, X-Men confirmed. I was like, oh, goodness. Oh, that's just Evan Peters' tattoo.
And also, two things that disappoint me in that. One is that in their bitterness, and I'm sorry, they're bitter, in their bitterness that they said, oh, they just set him up for a crude joke at the end, that his name is actually Ralph Boehner.
Yes.
I assumed that it was a joke about the former Speaker of the House, John Boehner.
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought. And then two, that they then began actively working against the success of the final episode by going on to sites, going to places like Rotten Tomatoes and giving it bad reviews so that it would drive down the numbers and things. And I thought, if there was a fan base that had a right to get angry, it was the Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans who had Emma Caulfield in this huge role in episode 2, and then she's gone.
Yeah.
Gone.
That was an interesting. I feel like there were lots of those in this show, though. They're like, hey, look over here, shiny object. And then they sneak in the truth on the left or whatever.
But
and
I was glad that they didn't take away from Wanda's story.
Yeah.
Because if they had brought in, if that is the way they had done X-Men, brought it into the MCU, it would have taken away from Wanda and her story of grief.
Yep.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that they didn't.
It is WandaVision. I mean, we have a very clear idea that Monica's character has been introduced here, but they didn't make it a big revelation. And then of course the huge final episode cameo that wasn't. And how many things did hear what it finally turned out why that was?
Yeah.
Because of Paul making a few jokes in interviews saying, oh, I'm working with an actor I've never worked with before and I always wanted to.
Of course. Yeah.
And it's himself.
Good for him.
Yes, good for him. But he said he was horrified when he saw that people were then going into hyperdrive saying, who is it going to be in the last episode?
Right.
And of course it was the cameo that wasn't.
I applaud him for it. Good for him. I would have done something like that and I would have let it ride. I'd be like, you know what? People might be upset, but I still love my paper dragon. Any other top things that you want to hit on WandaVision before we start looking from the past to the future?
One thing that was fun in creating all those stories was after I did the first one and then worked on the second one, two things I never could find and I really wanted to find: the entrance to Westview and the water tower. Yeah. And so I would start doing Google searches to look for them to see if somebody else had found them and to see what kind of articles were coming up. And when my own stories started coming up on the first page of the search, I felt good about it, but I also felt annoyed because I said, look, I already know what's in there and it's not the answer. It's not there. So I would have really liked to have found those.
If we ever do, we can always update them.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
No, I agree with you. They were really fun to read, and I usually read them a couple times through the process of it all. And it was one of those things that I was almost looking forward to those as much as the episodes, just because it gave you so much more perspective into the making of these episodes. Definitely. I guess is a good way to say it. And so thank you for writing those. That was a lot of fun.
Well, the two things that made me happiest in the documentary was when he actually in the final episode was when Vision said, "It appears our dream home has become a fixer-upper." I don't know if you noticed, but I consistently referred to Wanda's house as her dream home. And then when she said to Agatha, your role will always be the nosy neighbor. And I love that because I had very definitively said, here is the classic nosy neighbor. So that made me
you called that, I think, your first article.
Yeah. She was, of course, she was a paradigm. She was the paradigm.
That was, it was wonderful. So I think we all give 2 thumbs up to WandaVision. We'll see what happens with the future of Wanda with that really cool end scene. But we have also this Friday, right?
This Friday.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcon and the Winter Soldier will be coming on to Disney Plus this Friday. So we're not going to be short on Marvel content. And we got a really cool trailer this last week about this. And I generally have the opinion that most trailers don't need to be shown or made, because I usually walk away going, okay, that's nice. I didn't need to see that. This one, I actually walked away going like, I'm actually intrigued. Who would like to go first? Talk about this trailer. Ladies first, start. And then we'll go to Doug.
Well, have you watched the big 3? I thought that the trailer was so much fun. I really liked it. I have heard that they've released the name of the first episode. Don't know that I'm prepared for that.
I have not looked it up.
Oh, am I allowed to say it?
It's up to Doug.
Go ahead.
The name of the first episode is like "Rest in Peace, Captain America."
Huh. Aww.
So
could mean anything.
I was gonna say that seems like such a misdirect.
It could mean anything.
Yeah.
But
okay.
It'll be very interesting to see how that goes. Again, this is just things I read on the internet, guys. Like, please don't.
Then you know it's true. You know
it's true. If it's there, it has to be.
People don't lie on the internet. I'm fascinated. I think that Falcon and Winter Soldier are 2 really great characters that have never gotten the spotlight. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool.
I was just informed tonight that the director in an interview revealed that Falcon and the Winter Soldier is taking place 6 months after the events of Endgame.
Oh.
Which means it's shortly after WandaVision. So what has happened in WandaVision has already happened. Huh. And but it's still not necessarily our present. And of course, people are scurrying around figuring out the timeline with the Spider-Man films that are in the MCU. And,
right.
Okay, what should happen where? And I feel so sorry for the Marvel Studios that they have all these fans. It's like those incredible fans in Galaxy Quest who know absolutely every detail. And those poor actors, we're doing what it said in the script.
Right.
But I'm very excited about this. And because I think that after WandaVision made us all think, this one's just gonna blow stuff up good.
Yes.
So too.
Exactly.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be one of those ones we're gonna be cheering along through pretty much every episode, where we're gonna get that moment of just fun. Like, it's just gonna be fun. I think that's something that Marvel does really well, though, is they balance out the different emotions and the tones in their, I was going to say movies, but they now have the shows, and they do a good job of like, oh, we had this really heavy movie, let's throw Ant-Man in. And, like I remember going to the first Ant-Man movie. I'm like, what is this? I love it. I thought I was going to hate it, and so I'm excited about this. I always am intrigued when you put an unlikely pairing, and it seems like there's this kind of back and forth of like, we're going to tolerate each other. Like we're going to you know, this is not our first choice. It's
Mhm.
like there's so many cop movies, like old buddy cop movies where they're not buddies at the beginning, but by the
Exactly,
end.
yeah.
And I think that's what we're gonna get, I hope. And I think that's just gonna be fun to watch because that conflict is always hilarious. And I am surprised to say that I'm just as excited about this as I was about WandaVision. And if you'd asked me in, let's say, December or November, I'd have been like, oh, WandaVision next year, and then maybe Loki very close as my second thing I'm really looking forward to on the TV side. But this is coming up there really quick.
Definitely.
And interesting you would say that, because I'm sure you were at D23 when they announced these 3 projects.
Yep.
You know, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and WandaVision. And everybody kind of looked at each other and was like, WandaVision. And then there was like soap opera scene. I mean, old sitcom scenes.
Yeah.
And so if this is what I'm saying, if WandaVision, which had probably the lowest expectations, delivered this,
yeah,
imagine the next 2. I mean, I'm really looking forward to them.
It's mind-boggling, and I think that's exactly what we have to look forward to, and you can guarantee we'll be talking about it in the future. But we've run out of time for tonight. So, Caitie, what should people do?
Go to dapsmagic.com. Check out all of Doug's wonderful articles about WandaVision. If you type in WandaVision to the search bar, you will get there.
Nice.
So go read those there and subscribe to our mailing list so you don't miss anything in the future.
And make sure you follow Doug on Twitter. Is really your social media of choice, isn't it, Doug?
I don't choose any social media anymore.
Okay,
well, I am. You can see me on Twitter at Call Doug Marsh.
That is right. So make sure to check out Doug there, and we've also got his articles up everywhere.
Yes, read me on Daps Magic. That's where you want to go.
Look on Daps Magic and on Geeks Corner every once in a while. But that is all the time we have for you this week. So we will see you around the corner.
Bye.